You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja.
We love the herb.
It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Wednesday, November 15th, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. It's also got to be time for the Marijuana Business Conference. It's taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Las Vegas Convention Center right now, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And that means for today's show, I'm going to cut it a little bit short so that I can go catch a plane. I'm on Alaska Airlines tonight to Las Vegas, and I will be there at MJ BizCon tomorrow and Friday, getting all sorts of information and interviews from the over 650 vendor booths that will be there at the convention center. Got a lot of good friends in the Canna family that I'm looking forward to seeing. So if you want to meet up sometime, hit me up at Radical Russ on Twitter or Facebook. It'd be great to see some of y'all and get your opinions on what's happening in the Green Rush. Also, this weekend on Sunday, I will be in Ashland, Oregon, flying from Vegas to San Francisco to Medford and then driving to Ashland to participate in the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference. Check out OregonMBC.com if you still want to get tickets. Henry Rollins will be there for a VIP event plus a keynote. And I will be interviewing State Senator Floyd Przansky, one of the most influential supporters of marijuana reform in the Oregon legislature. I got a 1-hour exclusive interview with him on stage. If you've got questions for him about the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program or the recreational program, please send those in to me at Radical Russ. I'm on Gmail as well. Also, want to remind you about the International Cannabis Business Conference, internationalcbc.com in Kauai, Hawaii, December 1st through the 3rd. Doug Benson will be there. This is going to be the premier event in the Pacific. A beautiful time to go to Hawaii. The rates are low. There's a special deal on hotel rooms that ends very soon, so check out internationalcbc.com. Now, coming up on today's show, we got the full audio from Representative Steve Cohen grilling Attorney General Jeff Sessions yesterday about his comments on marijuana. Also, in A Sensible Future, we're speaking with James Gould, who's a student at CU Boulder. We'll ask him about what campus life is like now in the era of Colorado legalization. We'll also have a time for a radical rant about the Green Rush as we head to MJ BizCon. But first, the news.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Wednesday, November 15th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said that Obama-era marijuana enforcement policy remains in effect, conceded that cannabis isn't as dangerous as heroin, and admitted that an appropriations rider prevents the federal government from interfering with state medical marijuana laws. Sessions made the remarks in response to questions from Tennessee Representative Steve Cohen. Audio of the entire conversation will be played next on the full podcast of the Marijuana Agenda. The U.S. House Rules Committee blocked floor consideration of 2 marijuana amendments to a broad tax reform bill. The measures concerned a 280E fix and a federal excise tax on legal cannabis sales. All hope for 280E reform now lies on the Senate side. The chairman of the House committee is Texas Representative Pete Sessions, no relation to the Attorney General, who had previously blocked consideration of legislation that would aid military veterans in acquiring medical cannabis through their VA doctors in the states where that is legal. Representative Sessions has drawn the attention of Oregon Representative Earl Blumenauer in a story we broke here at the Marijuana Agenda regarding the formation of a political action committee to erect billboards in his district asking why Sessions won't help veterans. That act drew the attention of the national prohibitionist group Project SAM, which is now funding pro-Sessions billboards that thank him for fighting off the so-called, quote, predatory marijuana industry, end quote. A U.S. Sentencing Commission report found that, quote, black male offenders continued to receive longer sentences than similarly situated white male offenders, end quote. Black male offenders received sentences on average 19.1% longer than similarly situated white male offenders during the current period of fiscal years 2012 through 2016, as they had for the prior 4 periods studied. The differences in sentence length remained relatively unchanged. Violence in an offender's criminal history does not appear to account for any of the demographic differences in sentencing. Black male offenders received sentences on average 20.4% longer than the similarly situated white male offenders when accounting for violence in the offender's past in fiscal year 2016, the only year for which such data is available. Female offenders of all races received shorter sentences than white male offenders during the current period, as they had for the prior 4 periods. A former UFCW union organizer who was a mainstay in the California medical marijuana movement has been sentenced to over 3 years in federal prison on corruption charges. Dan Rush, the former chair of the Berkeley Medical Cannabis Commission, received a 37-month sentence for his conviction on charges of honest services fraud, money laundering, and violation of the Taft-Hartley Act, the 1947 law that prohibits unfair labor practices. Rush pleaded guilty to the charges, avoiding 15 felony counts that could have earned him up to 70 years in prison. Rush admitted he used his position with the UFCW to borrow money from a dispensary owner, then when he had difficulty repaying the loan, undermined UFCW efforts to unionize the dispensaries owned by his debtor, Martin Kaufman, and his business partner, Derek Peterson. In another charge, Rush offered special treatment to a Berkeley dispensary applicant for a quid pro quo offer of a, quote, well-paid job, end quote, threatening to take adverse action against the dispensary's application if he was turned down. Activists from MI Legalize, an organization seeking to end adult marijuana prohibition in Michigan via the 2018 ballot, held a candidate forum where 5 gubernatorial candidates offered their support. Quote, "We've seen other states do it wrong. In Michigan, we've got a chance to do it right," end quote, said former state Senate Minority Leader Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat who is running neck and neck with the leading Republican candidate, noted marijuana opponent Attorney General Bill Schuett. Democrat Abdul Al-Sayed, a medical doctor and former Detroit Health Department director, said, quote, "This has become a civil rights issue," end quote, referring to the disproportionate impact of prohibition and enforcement on people of color. Democrat Sri Tanadar, a scientist, said that science was on the side of legalization. Democrat Bill Cobbs, a former Detroit police officer, said, quote, "Most cops don't want to arrest people for marijuana because we understand what it does to somebody's life when we give them a criminal record," end quote. Longshot Republican candidate Evan Space, a military veteran, stressed that he wants to provide better access to cannabis for fellow vets suffering from post-traumatic stress. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Wednesday, November 15th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you appreciate my full-time dedication to reporting and analyzing the news about cannabis, consider becoming a patron of the show. For just $4.20 per month, you'll help keep my live stream and podcast free while earning yourself your own private ad-free podcast link for the show, as well as links to the supporting articles and data. For a $9.99 VIP subscription, you'll get all that plus my exclusive research, data tables, and graphics. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button today.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm astonished to hear people suggest we can solve our heroin crisis. Have you heard this? By having more marijuana.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
People should say no to drug use.
It's really, really easy.
Adding more gasoline to the fire.
Lackadaisical.
Really tough, really big, really great
to infect and rot our nation from within.
Dangerous gateway drugs.
We don't need to be legalizing marijuana.
To build and grow a stronger, healthier, and drug-free society.
What in the news?
Today in What in the News, we want to bring you the testimony of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He was called before the House once again to, for the, third time, reiterate what he knew or did not know about the potential collusion of the Trump campaign with Russia. Something our intelligence agencies say absolutely happened. And Sessions, in his 4.5 hours of testimony, was noted for saying over 20 times, I do not recall those times. If I did recall, he just had the worst memory when it came to this. You think he's the one that thinks we pot smokers have the bad memory. And yet he's saying, I don't recall. But during the questioning from the representatives, there was one particular set that stood out, and that was the questions that came from Tennessee Representative Steve Cohen. Now, if you're a follower of this show, you know Cohen's been interviewed on this show. We've covered him in numerous times as he has grilled DEA officials and other administration officials about marijuana policy, and he doesn't sit kindly to pot puns. He takes this very seriously, and he always ties this into the racial justice angle as well. So I thought this entire just about 3.5 minute segment was worth our attention, and I'll pause it on a couple of occasions just to make my own comments. But this is Tennessee Representative Steve Cohen grilling Attorney General Jeff Sessions yesterday in Congress.
Have been stopped. Secondly, on marijuana, you said that you are basically doing the same as Holder and Lynch. I believe General Holder and General Lynch abided by congressional appropriations that limited the Justice Department in enforcing marijuana laws where states had passed laws on medical marijuana and others. Will you abide by congressional appropriations limitations on marijuana when it conflict with state laws?
I believe we're bound by that.
Thank you, sir. That's great. That's great.
Okay, so this is what he's referring to as the CJS amendment, something in the past we've referred to as Rohrabacher-Farr or Rohrabacher-Blumenauer, but it's that appropriations amendment that specifically lists all of the medical marijuana states and says the Department of Justice can't spend money to go after prosecutions in those states. Now, keep in mind, the Department of Justice, even after that was released, went after the Kettle Falls 5 in Washington, okay? But through that trial and through some other hearings and such, it's been brought up that no, they cannot spend money to go after state legal medical marijuana operators and actors. Dana Rohrabacher himself, the representative who wrote this law, said that is the intent of the law. So here we have the Attorney General admitting under oath that he believes that is the current policy, that the Department of Justice can't go after, the DEA can't go after the state legal medical marijuana programs. But of course, keep in mind that appropriations rider expires in less than a month. And you can bet that Jeff Sessions is strong-arming some people in the House to make sure that doesn't get reintroduced or reappropriated or renewed, I should say, so they could have the freedom to go after the medical marijuana states. Let's continue with Sessions' testimony.
I saw what you did on crack cocaine was good. It wasn't as good as it could have been. Your proposal was a 20-to-1 ratio. Mr. Durbin's was a 10-to-1 ratio. Y'all decided on 18-to-1. You were a good negotiator, but Mr. Durbin took what he could get. But it should have been 1-to-1. But you admitted in that hearing that it could discriminate against the disparity against African Americans and minorities, and you ought to look at that.
I would just say that the net effect of that legislation was to significantly reduce the penalty one is subjected to for dealing with crack cocaine.
Yes, sir, and that was good.
That may be a better analysis than the 18-to-1 or whatever it is. It's generally considered a more dangerous drug.
Now, this is where I got to stop him because that is not true. Crack cocaine is no more dangerous a drug than regular cocaine. Cocaine is cocaine is cocaine. The only difference is that crack cocaine comes in small user amounts, primarily in the cities, primarily by people of color and poor people, whereas powder cocaine is used up on Wall Street and Park Avenue in large amounts by people of means, people who are largely white. That is the difference. Now, the disparity they're referring to is the fact that under the harsh sentencing policies and the mandatory minimum laws that were passed in the 1980s, the Just Say No 1980s, that Sessions wants to return to, the original disparity was 100-to-1. That is, you would get the same mandatory minimum sentence for 5 grams of crack. It would take you 500 grams of powder cocaine to get the same sentence. 500 grams. So the businessman on Wall Street with the 8-ball, he's going to be fine. He's not going to get a mandatory minimum. But the guy on the street who's got a personal user amount of crack, boom, hammer comes down. He gets a mandatory minimum. So that 100-to-1 disparity, 500 grams to 5 grams, that 100-to-1 disparity got reduced down to, as they noted, 18-to-1. It's now like an ounce of coke compared to 5 grams or whatever compared to a gram, whatever the ratio is, but they've got it set now. So it's an 18-to-1 disparity. Senator Durbin from Illinois was lobbying for a 10-to-1 disparity. Sessions was lobbying for a 20-to-1 disparity. So it's as if these people realized, wait a minute, this policy is inherently racist, but how much racism can we still keep? Well, we'll cut it down from 100, but you can't have it be 1-to-1. And the reason why, and you caught it with that last remark of Jeff Sessions, is because they fundamentally believe that crack is a more dangerous drug. And it is pharmacologically, sociologically, and economically not a more dangerous drug.
Marijuana is not as dangerous as heroin. Would you agree with that?
I think that's correct.
Well, thank you, sir. I would hope that in your enforcement that you would look at the limitations you've got. There's always an opportunity cost, and put your opportunity cost, your enforcement on crack, on cocaine, on meth, on opioids, and on heroin. Marijuana is the least bothersome of all. 28 states or 29 states in the District of Columbia have legalized it for medical purposes. 8 states in the District of Columbia for recreational purposes. Justice Brandeis famously said that the states are the laboratories of democracy. I would hope you'd look at marijuana and look at the states as laboratories of democracy and see how they've helped. In states where they've got medical marijuana, they have 25% less opioid use. It gives people a way to relieve pain without using opioids, which inevitably leads to death and crime. And so I would hope you take a look at that.
We will take a look at it, and we'll be looking at some rigorous analysis of the marijuana usage and how it plays out. I'm not as optimistic as you.
Not as optimistic. The studies have already been conducted, sir. We already have the evidence. We already have numerous different ways of looking at this through car crash data, through rehab data, through overdose data, through use data, through prescribing data that shows access to medical marijuana means less problems with opioids. But we know what Jeff Sessions thinks about that. You hear the clips played on this show all the time that he thinks it's silly to think more marijuana could help the opiate crisis. I put as much stock into him saying he's really going to take a look at that as I do him really wanting to fight the racism in the criminal justice system.
You said one time that good people don't smoke marijuana. Which of these people would you say are not good people?
Well, let me explain how that occurs.
Now, I would encourage everyone to watch the little smirk that comes across Sessions' face in this next clip.
All right.
Can I explain?
Quickly. John Kasich a good person? George Pataki, Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, George Bush, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Judge Clarence Thomas. Which of those are not good people?
Let me tell you how that came about, Congressman. So the question was, what do you do about drug use, the epidemic we're seeing in the country, and how you reverse it? Part of that is a cultural thing. I explained how when I became United States Attorney in 1981, and the drugs were being used widely, over a period of years, it became unfashionable, unpopular, and people were seen, and it was seen as such that good people didn't use marijuana. That was the context of that statement.
It might have affected short-term memory. What years were those?
Chair recognized.
So pretty much dodging the question there, dodging the whole part of that. But basically, he's trying to say that we create a negative culture. We demonize people that use drugs, and that'll make them stop using it. We know for a fact that doesn't work. And one last bonus question from Representative Cohen that, once again, Attorney General Sessions gets wrong.
One last question. Alabama or Auburn?
The gentleman.
War Eagle.
Time has expired.
Yeah, see, everybody knows the proper answer to Alabama or Auburn is Roll Tide. That one goes out to my friend Herb Thrasher, the big Alabama fan. But this clip is available. If you would like to get a copy of this, you can go to mjagenda.com later tonight. I will post that up on the blog. Or you can find my user-generated clips under my name, Russ Belville, at cspan.org. Whenever there's hearings like this, I like to go get those clips and try to save them. And you can also go to my Twitter feed, at Radical Russ. I think I tweeted the link out earlier today if you want that.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to shoot you. What over?
All right. Well, that sound means it's 20 after the hour. Time for us to take our union-mandated safety briefing, and we're getting ready for MJ BizCon. Watch for my reporting from MJ BizCon on the Radical Russ Twitter feed, hashtag MJ BizCon. We got an anti-drug public service announcement from Oregon counties coming up, and then SSDP's James Gould from CU Boulder. The Oregon Marijuana Business Conference, the state's longest-running conference dedicated to the cannabis industry, is coming to beautiful Ashland, Oregon on the weekend of November 18th and 19th. You'll hear from influential State Senator Floyd Przansky, meet and greet with industry pros and the legendary Henry Rollins, and enjoy a free after-party featuring music from Hieroglyphics and Souls of Mischief. Visit OregonMBC.com to learn more and book your tickets now. That's OregonMBC.com for the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net. Now, in the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Marijuana Agenda presents this anti-drug public service announcement.
Know the truth. Today's marijuana is addictive and not natural. THC levels in today's marijuana can be 37 times higher than the marijuana of the 60s, making it more addictive. 25 to 50% of daily marijuana users become addicted. Marijuana use causes impaired coordination, thinking, learning, and memory. Know the truth. Please visit Deschutes.org/marijuana facts. Brought to you by Deschutes County Children and Families Commission, Jefferson County Best Care Prevention, and the Crook County Community Coalition.
This has been an actual anti-drug public service announcement. To combat this and other drug war hysteria, listen to the Marijuana Agenda every weekday at 3 p.m. Pacific at live.mjagenda.com. New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
And one of the parts of the American dream is we're going to come down very, very hard on this massive drug problem.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
The International Cannabis Business Conference is headed to Hawaii. Get your tickets now for the year's best cannabis industry island retreat this December 1st through 3rd. Kauai Grand Hyatt hosts the 3-day ICBC, which begins with a VIP reception featuring cannabis comedian Doug Benson. The ICBC features exhibitor booths, keynote speeches, and informative panels with industry experts and regulatory officials. Then, when it's all said and done, kick back for the incredible after party with music by reggae legends Morgan Heritage. There's also a singles golf tournament you can play on Monday, sponsored by Leafly Endured Ventures. Log on to internationalcbc.com to get more information and buy your tickets now. Special discount hotel rates are in effect, so act fast. That's internationalcbc.com for the International Cannabis Business Conference. Aloha.
This is A Sensible Future, brought to you by Students for Sensible Drug Policy at ssdp.org. Drug policy is an issue that primarily affects the young, both in terms of use and legal prosecution. SSDP believes in honest education about drugs and advocates for harm reduction policies to protect young adults and society at large. We speak with another dedicated activist from SSDP, working toward a sensible future.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of A Sensible Future, the podcast for Students for Sensible Drug Policy. I'm Russ Belville, and joining us today, we have James Gould, who is a student at CU Boulder in Colorado. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So you are going to school at CU Boulder. How many years have you been attending there?
So I've been attending CU Boulder. This is actually only my second semester. I'm a part-time student at CU Boulder. And a full-time web developer and drug policy activist.
Oh, excellent. All right. So as you've been attending school there in Boulder, of course, everyone knows that Colorado legalized adult use of cannabis in 2012. And so you're about 5 years into it as a state, 3 or 4 years into it as far as the recreational markets go. What's that been like as a student? Has there been much before and after, much change in your perspective in college life since legalization?
So I actually moved to Boulder after legalization. I moved in 2013 or 2014.
Oh, okay. So was that a compelling reason to move to Boulder?
Absolutely, to be completely frank. Not having the odds of getting arrested if I do decide to consume cannabis was definitely a motivating factor in moving to Colorado. That was absolutely a motivating factor. I grew up in Arizona, actually, and Arizona has some very regressive laws. I saw a lot of people's lives absolutely ruined when I was in high school and middle school by relatively minor, or what should have been relatively minor, drug charges.
Okay, so you're at CU Boulder. You come up there in 2013, and of course, the legalization of cannabis is for people 21 and older, but people in college can be, 18 and older. Has that been a big issue with underage consumption? Does the university have any policies regarding that? So I have spoken to a number of people who have gotten minors in consumption for cannabis. And I'm actually working with the Drug Policy Alliance to research juvenile marijuana arrests in Colorado. We did see a reported increase in marijuana arrests for juveniles after legalization. Specifically, Black and Latino arrests went up after legalization occurred, and arrests for white juveniles went down. As for if it's a problem on college campuses, it isn't that big a problem. Usually it's a slap on the wrist. Usually it's a small fine, but it can get rather serious because it can go on people's permanent records. It can affect future employment opportunities, and it's just not really necessary to be arresting and giving criminal charges to anyone for marijuana consumption. Yeah, and it's a good thing, in the state of Colorado, you've got some more, some of the most progressive laws on this in the country as compared to, like you said, Arizona. So as a drug policy activist, do you find yourself now working on areas outside of the cannabis issue? And would you like to share some?
The vast majority of my work is outside of cannabis. I work a lot on harm reduction, both psychedelic harm reduction and injection drug use harm reduction. So I advocate for drug checking programs. We see on college campuses a lot of times people are taking white powders and calling them things like Molly, and they don't actually have any clue what's in those powders. And when we tell them what's in those powders, they get quite scared about what they just put in their mouth. And I also am a huge advocate for supervised injection facilities. This is something that's been tried in some 30 countries where people are allowed to access these facilities to inject drugs. and there's never been a death at one of these facilities. They massively reduce healthcare expenditures for people who inject drugs, generally very cost effective. And we're looking, we have a bill proposed in Colorado for a pilot program in Denver, which, if approved, could be the first pilot program approved in the country, in the U.S. right now.
Wow, that's really good news. And of course, everybody has heard about the opioid overdose crisis that's happening in America. So anything we can do to get more help in harm reduction in that area is definitely needed and long overdue. What are the roadblocks in trying to get such a thing accomplished there in Colorado? Are the people understanding of this and wanting it? Are there political roadblocks, hurdles you'll have to get past?
So if you want a more in-depth answer to that, you should speak to the people down at the Harm Reduction Action Center. However, I can say I've been rather surprised at how little opposition I have personally seen to this. It was proposed in a I'm forgetting the term, a special legislative session where they were specifically focusing on bills that they could pass to help with the opioid epidemic. And this bill, the bill that proposed supervised injection facilities as a pilot program, passed unanimously with bipartisan support. So that one of the co-sponsors was actually a Republican. So that is something that was surprising to me. There have also not been a huge number of people writing news that has been critical of this. There's been a massive amount of coverage from the media that has been actually in support of opening up a supervised injection facility, as well as a lot of local businesses and other organizations have gathered together and endorsed this legislation. The Harm Reduction Action Center has quite a list of people who have endorsed it at this point.
Fantastic news. I'm really surprised that there's not more friction in this particular issue, but maybe people are starting to get it. Maybe the education is starting to take hold. Another avenue of harm reduction I'd like to talk to you about, James, that's especially pertinent for colleges is alcohol. As drug policy reformers, we sometimes give the short shrift to talking about alcohol and the harms it causes. Do you have anything to tell us about what's happening at CU Boulder regarding alcohol policies?
With alcohol policies, we see a lot of similar things to cannabis with the legalization of cannabis in Colorado. So we're seeing a lot of similarities there. Again, people 18 to 21 are being criminalized for consuming alcohol, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You can go and serve your country, join the military, but you're still going to be criminalized for consuming alcohol. But it isn't that huge a deal because most people are just given a slap on the wrist. On college campuses, we do see a lot of people who are abusing alcohol and who are consuming too much of it. But we always have and likely always will. There are some ongoing education programs on college campuses, including CU Boulder's campus, about alcohol. Mainly people should know their dose. They should know what they're getting into. I also work with Students for Sensible Drug Policy. I have an internship with them where we're going into high schools in Denver to educate students about drugs, alcohol being one of those. So we're working on implementing more sensible education. Previously, the school has just had when I was going through my first semester, they showed us a video that showed how to turn down alcohol, which just isn't a realistic approach for most students. A majority of students are going to consume alcohol and should be given harm reduction education on how to do so safely. You should drink water in between drinks. You should pace yourself. You should not get behind the wheel of a car after consuming alcohol.
You shouldn't mix alcohol with any of the opiates. For certain. That's one of the ones we definitely want people to know. A lot of these opiate overdose deaths that happen due to a drug interaction, and most commonly, that one is alcohol. So I'm really happy, James, that you guys are involved with that and getting more information out. And I just, going back to something you mentioned, while I know it's probably politically impossible, do you think an 18-year-old drinking age and marijuana age, etc., would help in this regard?
So what I'd personally advocate for is decriminalization, because, as you said, it might be politically impossible for to have an 18-year-old drinking age and an 18-year-old cannabis consumption age. There would be a lot of opposition to that because a lot of people are like, well, they're still developing. But when we're talking about decriminalization, we're talking about just not criminalizing people for consumption of drugs. And
so keep 21 as like a commercial age, but 18 as a non-criminal age.
So I support decriminalization for all ages. I just really don't think it's helpful to be arresting children for consuming drugs. Like, there are other things that we could be doing than arresting them and oftentimes giving them permanent criminal records. In Arizona, I saw this at its logical extreme. At one point, I knew a kid who got arrested for a drug charge, and at a later point, he was on probation, and he was arrested for having cigarettes and was charged as an adult for consumption of tobacco or possession of tobacco as a minor, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, try to wrap my mind around the idea of a minor being charged as an adult for possessing something as a minor that as an adult he could possess.
And I think that a lot of that really put it in my head, these charges are ridiculous. We look at children and we say, well, you're not old enough to make the decision on whether or not you should be consuming alcohol. You're not old enough to make the decision on whether or not you should be consuming tobacco. But you are, so you're not old enough to accept the consequences and understand the consequences for those things. But then we also look at them and we say, but you are old enough to be charged in a criminal court for making those decisions, as if that's not oftentimes more destructive than the initial choice to consume alcohol or to consume tobacco or even cannabis. But as we were saying, it's probably politically impossible to decrease the consumption age to 18 because federal highway funding is largely contingent on states having that 21-year-old drinking age.
Gotcha. All right. Well, James, you got a wealth of knowledge there, and I'm really excited about the work you're doing there at CU Boulder and all throughout Colorado. Do you have any links or contact information you'd like to give our listeners?
What exactly kind of links are you looking for?
Oh, if anyone would like to get in touch with you, learn more about CU Boulder, help you out with your activities, join the group, anything like that.
Yeah. If you want to join Students for Sensible Drug Policy at CU Boulder, you can go on our Facebook page. That's Students for Sensible Drug Policy at CU Boulder, and you can message that and get in contact with us. If you want to directly reach out to me for anything, my email is jamesagould123@gmail.com. So anybody can just reach out to me at that email.
All right. Well, that sounds good as far as getting the contact info. And, of course, on the national scale, people can visit ssdp.org to learn more about Students for Sensible Drug Policy. James Gould from CU Boulder SSDP, thanks for joining us here on A Sensible Future, and good luck on all your endeavors.
Thanks, Russ. You as well.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJagenda.com.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is brought to you by Cannabis Kamikaze, a professional licensed producer from Canada producing 3 pounds per light. Follow Cannabis Kamikaze on Twitter at Cannabis Kamikaze. That's at Cannabis, Kamikaze. Cannabis Kamikaze.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
We need to say, as Nancy Reagan said, just say no. Don't do it. There's no excuse for this.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor-intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
Health Cannabinoid, your ACMPR experts. Consultation services for medical cannabis. Visit healthcannabinoid.com or call 1-800-906-1383. That's www.healthcannabinoid.com or call 1-800-906-1383. Health Cannabinoid.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I inhaled. That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Radical Rant.
Well, it's the end of this week's podcast because I've got to go get on a plane in a couple of hours and head to the Marijuana Business Conference, MJ BizCon, down there in Las Vegas, Nevada. Really looking forward to going there. This is my first time, last couple of years it's been going on, and I've had a number of friends and colleagues in the industry who've been there and have told me some amazing stories about it. It's just absolutely huge as far as these expos go. And with the advent of legalization in Nevada, particularly in Las Vegas, the industry is just getting bigger. And I've been doing these trade shows and marijuana expos now for a long time, a decade or more. And it's just been amazing, the level of professionalism and the level of investment that is going into the marketing of cannabis and the various ancillary businesses that are involved with it. I remember going to the first few events and there'd be 10 by 10 pop-up tents, that you get at the Costco, and some tables and, a couple of pot leaf type cloth tapestries laid out on them. And now, my God, you go to some of these events and there's 30 by 30 booths with multiple floors and light shows and, bars set up and massive displays. You got the extract companies with their huge $30,000 closed loop machines. It's just a spectacle anymore. On par with anything you'll see as far as car shows or CES or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, the marijuana industry is getting big. So I have no doubt that when I go there for the next couple days on the expo floor, I'll be sending you pictures through my various social media accounts of some amazing things. But through all that, I think it's important we take a moment to pause, catch our breath in the midst of this massive green rush, and recognize that the only way this green rush gets bigger is if more states legalize. And the only way more states legalize, as we get past the low-hanging fruit of initiative states, is if legislators are well educated on this issue. Now, I think it's a foregone conclusion that adult marijuana prohibition is on the skids. It's on the way out. But how it transpires from here on out and how quickly it transpires is what we're fighting about now, is what we are working toward. And to that end, I would encourage anybody who's going to the MJ BizCon to maybe dig through past the massive displays of glass and the huge extractors and the big video presentation screens and everything that's going to catch your eye there, and look for the activists. Look for the normal booth, SSDP, Marijuana Policy Project, Drug Policy Alliance, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, Law Enforcement Action Partnership, any of those groups that you can find, because they don't have those kind of budgets. They can't blow tens of thousands of dollars on this huge display setup that you're going to have. They're nonprofits. People working for them, largely volunteers, or if they're salaried, they are salaried at a level far lower than a commensurate type of job in the corporate world or in the green rush could possibly pay. And donate to these groups and get their information and spread their information throughout these people in the green rush. A lot of people getting involved in this now are money people. They could give a damn whether it's marijuana or mangoes or multi-level marketing. Doesn't matter to them. It's just a money thing. We need to inculcate those people into our culture and to understand what our mores are, what we're looking for as a part of legalization. I know there's a lot of people in our movement that are caught up in it's the green rush and the corporate bastards all upset. Hey, it's happening whether you like it or not. So I would recommend that you start to get to know some of these people and start to have a positive influence on them. People aren't swayed by fact, science, reason, or logic. If they were, this would have been legal a long time ago. People are swayed by personal stories. People are swayed by knowing people. And so get to know the people who are coming in this green rush. Find out what we have in common. Find out where our goals can meet at a better type of legalization that works for everyone involved. And one that especially begins to address this disproportionate, destructive nature of the drug war on communities of color, on low-income communities. We need to make sure that we are forcing that issue to the fore as this green rush continues. So that's about all the time we have for today. I got to get going. I got to catch a flight. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back on Monday. I think we'll be back on Monday. Let me check the calendar. Monday, because we got... Yeah, sure. I'll drive in the morning. We'll be back Monday with more news and views you can use for the cannabis community. For everyone here at Delta 9 House and Studios, I'm Radical Russ Belville. Thanks so much for your support. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.